Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD, here to bring you true crime. You know, the story that we're covering tonight, it's over a year old, but it's such a horrific story. And basically, it was the execution of a family of four in Romeoville, which is right outside of Chicago. And on the left side of the thumbnail that you're seeing on the screen is the perpetrator, whose name is Nathaniel HueyJr. He's up at the top. And at the bottom, he's there with his fiancee, Ermelinda Palomo. And on the right side is a family of four who were murdered in this devious plot that has so many twists and turns. There's a better picture of the family. And almost all the time that I've seen in my police career, violence of this level is usually somehow interconnected with drugs, with narcotics. But it turns out, in this case, that's not true. It has nothing to do with narcotics. And as we go along here, we're going to discuss what it does involve. And let's say that it involves a level of evil and deviousness that few of us see even in our long police careers. I mean, just imagine murdering a 7-year-old and an 8-year-old when they're clearly not the targets, and killing 3 dogs, the family dogs, and of course killing Zoraida Bartolome and Alberto Rolón, the husband. There's Alberto Rolón and Zoraida Bartolome, the mom and dad of these 2 young boys. So you wonder, why would anyone deserve such a violent death like this? And usually the answer is drugs. But as I'm telling you right now, we're going to get into this. And it turns out that's not what it is. So folks, hold on to your seats, hold on to your hats, hold on to your glass of wine, your cup of tea, whatever you need. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped in 10th and Ranch Michael Byler.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
This is a word from our sponsor. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet online. The game starts here. I want to introduce someone that's going to do this, co-host the show with me. And you've seen and heard him before, retired NYPD Sergeant, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, the always humble Professor Mike Geary. Mike, welcome.
Bill, good evening. Thank you for having me on. Thank you. Bill, this will be a really good show tonight.
Mike, this case is just one of the ugliest things ever I've ever seen, really. Um, and surprisingly to me, again, it's not involving drugs. But what does it involve? And we'll get into that. Um, the people involved in this case, the one woman involved in this case, who is the fiance of Nathaniel Huey Jr., and he has a picture of them on the screen right now. Her name is Ermelinda Palomo. What an evil, evil, evil piece of shit this lady is, really, when you think about it. She was the catalyst behind this entire horrific happening, this entire horrific murder. Nathaniel Huey Jr. allegedly murdered his mistress, Zoraida Bartolome. So that's what it's about. You see Zoraida there with her husband and her two boys. Her husband, Alberto Rolón, and their sons, Adriel, 9, and Diego, 7. And this occurred on September 16th, 2023. He, Nathaniel Huey Jr., was tricked by his fiancée, Palomo, into believing he was being watched by Mexican and Bulgarian criminal organizations who instructed him to kill the family. Palomo allegedly made Huey believe that Bartolome was tasked with targeting him and he needed to perform a counterattack. New details have been revealed in the deaths of Alberto Rolón, his wife Zoraida Bartolome, and their sons Adriel, 9, and Diego, 7, and their 3 dogs. According to the police documents, it detailed how Palomo first learned of Huey Jr.'s affair with Bartolome. Palomo first used fake social media accounts to convince Huey Jr. he was part of a Mexican and Bulgarian criminal organization. She also convinced Huey Jr. there was a mole planning to attack him and told him 2 days before the murders that Bartolome was the mole targeting him. Quite an elaborate story, Mike, but evil nonetheless, extremely evil. Your thoughts?
Bill, they always say truth is stranger than fiction, and this is a great example of it. If you didn't know this story and you didn't know, and you just watched a movie on TV, you went to the theater and you saw something like this, you'd be like, that doesn't make any sense. This is ridiculous. How could this happen? This is utterly bizarre, but it's true. It is all true. The police have all of the electronic data, the cell phone data, and they've got all of the searches she did, Ms. Palomo, and the manipulation went on for about over a year, perhaps right around a year. And on the thumbnail also, it shows Mr. Huey in a security guard outfit, the upper right corner. He was a security guard. He's responsible. He has access to weapons, and he's the kind of person that you would think would be responsible for other people's safety and exercising good judgment. How he came to be manipulated into believing that he had to kill his girlfriend before his girlfriend was a mole in some organization. She was going to kill him. It's you just wonder about the thought processes of these people, and it end up as stupid as it sounds and ridiculous as it sounds. The ending was so tragic because you have an entire family wiped out, and then you have the killer and the accomplice wiped out, and that's the tragedies. This all ended up. It didn't have to end up this way. It all ended up with 6 people killed and an entire family wiped out.
Forbidden Planet from the chat. Do the Mexicans and Bulgarians even work together? No, but that doesn't matter when you're dealing with a numbskull like this guy who is swayed by his fiance, who you see in the left part of this picture, who set this whole thing up so he would kill Zoraida Bartolome, who you see in the other picture with her husband and her 2 children. This was all a love triangle with a devious woman who was the fiance of the shooter, who she encouraged him. But I mean, what does that say? If someone told you the old expression, if someone told you to jump off the Brooklyn Bridge, would you do it? No. So what was wrong with his his brain that he did this. This is from the local NBC affiliate. To get a story from the news in that local area of Romeoville, Chicago.
It started here on this Romeoville block, September 17th, 20.
I don't know why it stopped. Hang on a second.
Before the Romeoville mass killers,
Hang on, I'm gonna go backwards. If we can, I'll play this.
Nathaniel HueyJr. and Ermelinda Palomo, their fatal attraction, kiss of death, is just one of the massacre red flags in the months leading up to a crazed suburban attack. Police say Huey and Palomo were behind a murder plot that wiped out a family, parents, children, dogs, and all. And police reports obtained tonight by the I-Team reveal there were numerous threats and warnings that many never reported to police.
I don't know if anybody's in there or not.
There were people in this Romeoville home when police arrived for a well-being check, but they were all dead. Zoraida Bartolome, Alberto Rolón, and their two young sons, Adriel and Diego, all executed along with the three family dogs.
Oh.
The victims of an outrageous plot cooked up and carried out by this Streamwood couple, Ermelinda Palomo and her fiancé, Nathaniel HueyJr. Police say to extinguish a love affair between Huey and the married Bartolome. According to these crime records obtained tonight by the I-Team, Huey killed the children because the kids were better off dead than alive without parents. Huey, who owned a fledgling security company, was a suspect from the beginning because authorities quickly found a months-long trail of text messages and emails written and sent to the victims by his fiancée, Ermelinda Palomo, who had engineered the plot as a drug cartel hit, apparently an effort to fool even her fiancé into carrying out the killings.
I mean, you're telling us there's no threats.
Police video showing Huey being questioned shortly after the killings about text threats that had started months before the family's execution. Warnings they would be killed if the illicit affair didn't stop. Less than 2 weeks before the killings, this blunt text to Alberto Rolón. This will be the last I say of this, Alberto. This stupid girl will be the reason you have no children. Despite many red flags, police records do not indicate the family ever reported to authorities they were being threatened with death. And it wasn't just the family. Zoraida Bartolome had confided with a co-worker about the threats her husband had received, and that co-worker apparently never reported anything to authorities. The killers fled Chicago for Oklahoma, only to die in a murder-suicide. The full story going up in flames. The I-Team obtained Romeoville police records and recordings after a Freedom of Information filing under Illinois state law. But police officials there have not agreed to our invitation for a TV interview to provide some context to the case, files, and answer questions, and about how the investigation was closed. Perhaps more importantly, whether all those red flags might be brought to their attention the next time, which of course we hope will never occur.
Watch.
You know, it's so easy always to look back and say, woulda, coulda, shoulda. You know, this is what should have been done. This is what other people knew about it. Should the wife, Zoraida Bartolome, she was having an affair. So obviously she didn't want to take this as seriously as she should have and reported it to the police, because that meant telling her husband what was going on. And first of all, as I said early on in this case, it's like when you see this level of violence, it usually involves narcotics, and it didn't. It didn't. But so my question is, how is this knucklehead who right here, who you see on the screen, Nathaniel HueyJr., how did he go from owning a fledgling security company to killing 4 people, and actually killing 5, because he wound up killing his fiance and then killing himself? How did that happen, Mike? Who was this guy? Was this his first time out? Was he a criminal? Well, we don't know that much about his background. So think of what he did. They also, they planned this. They reconned this. His fiance, Palomo, drove him. Ermelinda, her first name is Ermelinda Palomo. She drove the night to the crime scene. Over 20 shots were fired, and no one reported hearing gunfire. And it turns out that he may have firearms, according to pictures that the police seized that had silencers. So that could explain why no one reported hearing over 20 gunshots. So he kills all 4 people in that house, including 2 young boys, 8 and 9 years old, 3 dogs, and 2 adults. That's a sick dude, Mike.
Yeah, it's really pathetic. Maybe perhaps the reason why it seems like overkill, killing the 2 children and the 3 dogs. They're innocent children. They have nothing to do with anything that any adult did. Maybe in his warped mind, and he's an evil, warped person. He's malleable. He is brainwashed by his girlfriend. But the thing is, he did it. He did it. He's the one that fired all the shots. So that makes him as evil as her. I would imagine that he does have some criminal record, maybe a minor criminal record, because I would think that if you're going to get a security guard license and you're going to be bonded by a state, like say, for instance, here in New York, they're going to do a fingerprint background check on you. It's a process that you got to go through. So he may have a minor criminal record for something, but nothing major. I doubt he'd have any sort of felony on his record. And if he had those guns legally, if they were licensed, and he was able to carry a firearm, like a concealed carry permit in Illinois, and Illinois has probably the strictest gun control laws in the country, then he'd have to also pass a background check for that. But that's the sad part is this happened almost a year ago. The finale, that fiery finale on the expressway, happened about a year ago, but the police department in Romeoville just really released all the information on the Freedom of Information request, and everything is resurfaced. But it's amazing what a demented, violent, sick person like this could do when urged on by their girlfriend Irma Linda Palomo. Why he would do this, why he would even think for a second that his girlfriend was a mole that was going to kill him before he killed her. How does somebody believe that? He's missing a few cards in his deck, is all I can say. But it goes to the fact that truth is stranger than fiction, and there's nothing that you could possibly think of that a demented person hasn't done. That's part of the human condition. And what he did was vicious and cold-blooded. And perhaps the overkill was to make it look like it was a drug cartel hit. That, if he wanted just to kill the husband named, Alberto, if you want to kill Alberto or his girlfriend, Zoraida, that's one thing. But to make it really look like a drug hit and maybe throw off the police, he wiped out everybody. Scary.
I think they're actually, Mike, I think their intention or his intentions were to make it look like a violent burglary, like done by kids, And on the screen, this is the picture of Melinda Palomo. She's the mastermind. She's the evil bitch that came up with this idea. And she urged on this pea-brained moron to do this Nathaniel Huey Jr. And not without blame in this is the Zoraida Bartolome. She was having an affair with Huey Jr. and met him at some electronics or engineering company that I guess he worked at also, because they said he had a fledgling security company. But with the warnings, the threats she was getting for months and months, and again, you can always say woulda, shoulda, coulda, but if she would have maybe went to the police instead of not reporting it to anyone, maybe this horrific murders would not have happened.
Here on this Romeoville block, September 17th, 2020.
I don't know why this does this on this one.
New video from Romeoville police shows the moment they responded.
Oh, God. Dogs are dead. 2 dead dogs.
Officers found a crack in the window and overturned tables inside, the first sign something was awry. Inside, Zoraida, Alberto, their 2 kids and 3 dogs shot and killed by a combined 20 bullets. Police reports show investigators used iPass video, Ring doorbells, cell phone towers, and flock cameras to find a man named Nathaniel HueyJr. Documents show he was Zoraida's co-worker, claiming they were having an affair, and say his partner, Ermelinda Palomo, knew about it. As police were looking into Huey as a suspect, he and Palomo fled. Her family initially filed an endangered missing person report, believing he took her and that she was in trouble. That brings the story 600 miles away to Catoosa, Oklahoma. Footage obtained by NBC5 shows Huey and Palomo days after the murder together, walking into a Walmart side by side. Inside the store, surveillance shows them shopping. They leave the store together, smiling. A short time later, a flock camera system in the parking lot picked up their license plate, and as they got into their vehicle to take off, Catoosa police squad cars were right behind them. The chase ended in a fiery crash.
Get out of the car!
Body cam footage shows the vehicle in flames. Police say Huey shot Palomo and then himself inside.
Armed and dangerous murder suspect. Out of where? Illinois, I think.
An Oklahoma officer on scene tries to piece together who they were.
She's the missing person, endangered. He's the murder suspect.
Another isn't so sure.
It looked like she was being held against her will.
A new report from Romeoville police obtained by NBC5 News paints a much different picture. So who was Ermelinda Palomo, and why was that Romeoville family of 4 killed on that tragic night?
Last September, Palomo's family attorney said this.
The family wants to make it clear that Ermelinda had nothing to do with the murders in Romeoville.
But an investigation revealed a year of manipulation and deceit. Police say Palomo was aware of the affair Nathaniel was having with Zoraida. They say investigators analyzed iCloud backup records and found Palomo created multiple fake online profiles and phone numbers to communicate with Huey. He thought he was talking to members of a Mexican cartel that had ties to Palomo. Police say Huey didn't know those fake accounts detailed a virtual world Ermelinda created. One account persuaded Huey he was a cartel hitman. Over the year, the messages escalated until one day the account told Huey he needed to kill Zoraida and her family. So Huey, believing he was now a part of this dangerous cartel, carried out the murders while police say Palomo was in the car outside waiting. The report says Huey admitted to committing the murders to a police informant because people were after him. The officer's report says there's no reason to believe Huey ever knew she was the one behind the accounts, and he likely died in Oklahoma without ever knowing that truth. Romeoville's police chief says nothing can justify a senseless act of violence, and this case, unfortunately, does not mean closure for so many continuing to grieve. Courtney Sisk, NBC5 News.
So this is extremely convoluted and difficult to understand unless it's sort of explained. And this is the couple, Nathaniel Huey Jr. He is the shooter. He's the one that murdered Alberto Roland, Zoraida Bartolome, and their 2 sons in that house. And that was over an affair that Huey Jr. was having with this lady in this picture, the mom. Her name is Zoraida Bartolome. She met him at her job, and they were having an affair. And this evil one, right here, I'll put on the screen, Ermelinda Palomo, she was the fiance of Huey Jr., and she wove this web of deceit that convinced this pea-brain here to murder a family of 4. You cannot, as I say, you cannot make up things like this. Truth is always stranger than fiction. You know, folks, someone said in the chat before, it must have been horrendous to walk into that house. And I've walked into houses like that when there's been multiple murders, and you go from room to room and you find bodies in the different rooms. And how horrific to find an 8 and a 9-year-old dead of gunshot wounds. And then the husband and the wife and 3 dogs to make the scene complete for this moron and his evil deeds. But yes, I mean, these are the things that police see that you can never unsee. And the evilness behind this is beyond the pale. Mike.
Yeah, and one of the interesting facets of this is that Huey it wasn't like, his girlfriend, Irma Linda, maybe he knew she had some, one connections with some sort of narcotic distribution in the past, and maybe she would threaten him by saying, if you don't do this deed, we're going to kill you because you've cheated on me. I've got friends with big guns, kind of thing. No, it doesn't seem like there was any threats whatsoever. It was just all talk convincing him. So he did this willingly. There was nobody, twisting his arm behind his back. He was under no threats whatsoever, no coercion whatsoever, other than the fact that towards the end, of all of the messaging, towards the end, he was told that Zoraida was a mole in a rival gang who was going to kill him. How he could be manipulated, how weak he is to be manipulated into somehow going along with it, even if he wasn't totally sure of what the heck was going on. How could you be manipulated into doing something like this? That's really strange. And hopefully, maybe we'll get some answers from other people, from other investigators, newspaper reporters. But yeah, that's one of the things that bothers me is you're a grown man, you got a security guard company. You would think that you're a fairly responsible person who actually, kind of believes a little bit in law and order. And then to be talked into this by someone who's your girlfriend, that your fiance, you should know her pretty well. You should know, what she's like. To the idea that she could actually convince you that you're a hitman for drug cartel. I mean, that's bizarre. That's just really, really bizarre and tragic.
Mike, one of the things that I always look at, and I think it's interesting for the folks that listen and watch us, is that the investigation. Now, the police were sent there on a wellness check, and I believe they were sent there by the employment of Alberto Rolone, who's the husband,
Right.
that he didn't show up for work. And I'm sure, I guess it's not like him not to show up for work. And the police get there, and they discover this horrific scene. What do they do? What do? They see from the outside the apartment, the house in disarray, tables knocked over, dogs dead on the floor. That gives them obviously hints that there are bad things going on. Then they make entry into the house and they discover the horrific scene. Zoraida and Alberto dead, the two children dead, all of gunshot wounds. Now, I don't know if HueyJr. cleaned up the crime scene and got rid of the spent shells, but they have this horrendous crime scene. So now, what did the police do? Well, the patrol officers will back out of the location once they realize there's no one alive at the location, because the first thing any police officer is trained to do is to protect life first. So make sure before you back out of there that no one is alive that might benefit from EMS or life-saving techniques that you could employ. But once you determine that, you back out, and then you leave the scene to the crime scene officers. And then, of course, you would have, if this was New York City, they would probably have about 50 detectives show up. And one of the most important things is the canvassing of the block. And you heard them say what really solved this case, of course, were ring cameras, cell phones, of course, license plate readers, poll cameras, all of those things now that are with us in 21st century law enforcement. And early on, HueyJr. and her first name is Irma Linda Palomo, they were suspects.
Very quickly, yeah.
Very quickly, but they didn't have enough to hold them. But yet the family of Irma Linda was saying, oh no, she's taken against her will by him. So they were already trying to set up her alibi, even though she was as evil or more so than he was. So once they found out that they were not just persons of interest. They were legitimate suspects. They put, of course, an all points bulletin. They put an alarm out on their car. Here's the flyer right here. And that flyer and putting an alarm out on the plate was read by a license plate reader. And that information was relayed to the Oklahoma, Catoosa, Oklahoma police, who, lo and behold, there's the car right there. And they go to pull it over and they get involved in a chase. And this was the results of that chase. The car on fire. He executes his fiancee, Ermelinda Palomo, and then kills himself. So total, in this horrific crime, 6 people, although we don't care that the perp killed himself, and he kills his fiancee. It turns out she was just as evil as him. So 6 people were killed in this incident. Your thoughts?
You know, how they thought this would ever end well for them is beyond me. You can't go back. You already know you're a suspect. You're in Oklahoma. That's why you're there. You had to give up your home within probably 48, 72 hours, I think, of being first interviewed by the police, because the police started interviewing them, I think, within like 48 hours. So you know they know who you are, and they're looking at you, and you left an electronic breadcrumb. She may not have realized just how much of an electronic breadcrumb she left. But, you know, where do you think you're going to go? Are you going to go to Mexico? Or it's not like, 100 years ago, you escape across the border or hide out in the desert. Where are you going? How does this end? Do you think it's going to blend into America and drive around unnoticed? That's the way it ended after the homicides, the way it ended in Oklahoma. That's the best for everybody concerned, because they don't even get to terrorize anybody else. They don't get to be chased by the police, take somebody hostage. There wasn't a big shootout with the police that endangered the public. I'm glad the way it ended, but where they thought they would go when they're in Walmart buying stuff like a burner phone, and I think they bought burner phone and some hair dye or something like that. A few things to stay on the run. How long do you think you're going to be on the run?
Mike, that's so
short-sighted.
In a way, that's so ill thought of and so funny. They buy hair dye and disguises, but they don't change the plates on their car.
Right.
Like the gang that couldn't shoot straight, the stupidity. Schmitty just asked me what time did these murders happen. And the murders actually occurred on September 16th at like 0300 to 0400 in the morning.
That's
so
right.
all of that was planned also. And Ermelinda was in the car waiting for him outside. So she urged him to do, and they reconned the location. They knew the house directly behind the house in question was empty. So they also reconned for ring cameras and stuff. I guess they didn't do that excellent of a job, because what the police got into right away, of course, were the cell phones. And that is what always catches people. Let me play this here.
Romeoville family of 4 and their dogs were gunned down in their home. The murder suspect fled to Oklahoma with his fiancée. They died in a murder-suicide there following a fiery police chase. Romeoville police are now revealing some shocking new details about what truly happened inside that home, who they say is responsible, and why. This is a story full of remarkable twists that sound really like they're out of a movie. NBC5's Courtney Sisk has been following this story for the past year. She joins us now with the latest. Courtney.
Marian, this case brought about so many questions for the Romeoville community after a mother, father, their 2 young boys, and their dog shot and killed. Police just released hundreds of pages and multiple videos going through the details now that their investigation is complete. Zoraida Bartolome, Alberto Rolón, their kids and dogs were found shot dead during a wellness check. Police identified Nathaniel HueyJr. as a suspect and say he was with his fiancée, Ermelinda Palomo. Her family thought at first she was missing and filed a missing persons report.
We are now deep into dozens of police documents, and seeing this story has many different layers. The documents paint Palomo now as playing a secretive, larger role in planning the murders. Police reports even claim she created multiple fake social media accounts in an attempt to persuade Huey to commit the crimes. We have a ton more to go through in this report, and we will be sharing more details behind what seems like it's a web of affairs, manipulation, and deceit that's coming up tonight at 6. Stefan.
Okay.
So, guys, for people that are coming in late, what this is about really is not anything to do with drugs. It was a love triangle, which we see so many times. There's fatal outcomes to these incidents. And Zoraida Bartolome, who I'll put I should have had a solo picture of her on the screen, but this is Zoraida here. She was having an affair with HueyJr, who she met at her job, where he also worked. So there he is on the screen, and this is Zoraida Bartolome, and she's the one that has these 2 boys and a husband. So there's the family of 4 right there. Now, Ermelinda Polano, she was the one that devised this horrific plan and this sort of story. She made it up to get this idiot to kill Zoraida Bartolome, and it turned out her whole family. When this moron HueyJr was asked, he told his mother he killed the whole family, and his mother asked him, "Well, why'd you have to kill the kids?" And he said, "I think they would be better off dead than living without parents." I mean, the stupidity of this dude, right? Stupidity, evil, whatever you could say, but just you don't see this type of evil every day, and I'm sure that it took a while for the police to put this together, the story together, because the story comes from pulling all the information from the cell phones, the different text messages, the threats, probably on the computer also, the threats that this woman, Ermelinda Palomo, made against Zoraida Bartolome and her family. So she was the catalyst to this whole horrific event. Because obviously this guy here, HueyJr, the shooter, he has a pea brain. So he could be just manipulated into doing something that was so horrific. And she obviously knew how to manipulate this guy. And she did, to the tune of murdering 4 people. Mike.
Yeah, it was so unnecessary. There, this is an affair. You're not married. It's your fiance. This is the best you can do. This is the best problem-solving skills that you have. Is smart and stupid at the same time. You're smart enough to make up all of these other social media contacts and use different phones and manipulate him with all kinds of text messaging, and you're smart enough to do that. But you're stupid enough where you can't figure out a less lethal, non-violent, natural, normal way to settle your issues with your fiance. Go to couples counseling, whatever it happens to be. Break up with them, whatever it is. But no, you don't do that. You spend all that time and all that effort, and you end up over the course of a year figuring out somewhere along the line that this has to end in death. It has to end in death for your rival, for your boyfriend's or your fiance's affection, notwithstanding the fact that she herself is a mom with 2 children and a husband. You can't even just, figure out a better way to do this. That's the weird thing, is that he is dumb and violent, and she is smart and dumb and violent at the same time. And it was so much death and destruction that was totally unnecessary if a cooler head had prevailed. And that's shocking to me. That's another facet of this case. It's shocking to me when idiocy or evil meets gullibility here. It ends up in a real horrific, tragic situation.
Absolutely. Melody Nicole, will you show the police interrogation? Melody, I actually don't have that tonight, the police interrogation, but just realize he was questioned and then let go, because in the first days after these murders, his name came up, but they did not have enough evidence to charge him. So they had to let him go. And then after they let him go, they realized, well, they got new information, they got new evidence. He was the number one suspect. And that information was put out there, and that's how they were arrested. And the police in Oklahoma attempted to pull him over, and you saw the results of that. They crashed in a fiery crash on the highway. And HueyJr, the upper right there in his security vest there, he murdered his fiance who was in the car and then killed himself. So this whole case is extremely convoluted, but a lot of moving parts.
Mystery marked this unfathomable murder case in September 2023. A family of 4 and their dogs executed at gunpoint in the dead of night. Months ago, the I-Team filed public records requests. Tonight, we've obtained a full complement of documents and videos from Romeoville authorities, revealing a tangled killing plot, a fatal attraction love affair that brought down this family. Police files reveal a suburban couple killed the family to stop an illicit romance. He was the shooter, but tonight we've learned she was the mastermind, building an elaborate plot to make it appear a drug cartel hit.
Got it.
Police body cam video as officers make a Sunday well-being check on a Romeoville family that hadn't been heard from. The explanation quickly apparent. Alberto Rolone, Zoraida Bartolome, and their boys, 9-year-old Adriel and 7-year-old Diego, all shot to death, along with the 3 family dogs. Tonight, hundreds of pages of police records reveal that the family was wiped out by 9mm trigger man Nathaniel Huey Jr., a former security guard who was involved in a love affair with the married Bartolome. And police reports state that this woman, Huey's fiancée, Emelinda Palomo, had posed as a drug cartel operative, texting orders to the apparently gullible Huey to execute the family for the cartel. She drove him to the murder scene, and a day later, police tracked the couple and questioned them.
We're trying to figure out what happened at that house.
You wouldn't be covering for Nate at all?
No, he was here. Even my daughter said he was here.
Do you think he's capable of taking someone's life?
No.
But without solid evidence, they are released and leave town. 2 days later, now both solid suspects, the couple is cited in Oklahoma, where a police chase ends in a fiery crash, Huey shooting his fiancée to death and killing himself.
This brings evil to a whole new level.
ABC 7 police affairs consultant and former suburban police chief Bill Kushner tonight says he's never seen a murder case so complicated and convoluted.
She started this based on the report to keep him faithful in his infidelity to her. It grew into the drug cartel story and multiple pinger phone numbers and text messages, and she really wove quite a web of deception.
Early on a year ago, the plot mastermind herself was described as an abduction victim held against her will, and her family even filing a missing persons report. Tonight, records obtained by the I-Team reveal at least one family member of the shooter, Nathaniel Huey Jr., knew about what had happened. Police say Huey confessed to his own mother that he was the killer. What she did with that is not apparent. Police tonight have declined interviews, and Huey's attorney at the time has not immediately responded to I-Team questions. A few details still hanging out there on this, but it seems to clear up a lot of the real puzzle.
I'm sure for a while, this information, the news, everyone wanted to know what was the inside story to this. And it seems like it's really just coming somewhat full circle now, where the whole story is coming out. But the story is really, it's really horrific, you know. And as I said, you usually don't see this level of violence unless there is narcotics involved. And sure, the story was told as if there was a drug cartel involved, but there wasn't. There wasn't. This woman knew how to manipulate this idiot to kill her rival, her love, the love triangle rival. And she manipulated Huey Jr. to murder her, to get her out of the way. And it backfired on her too, because he killed her too.
Yeah, everything that she did, it ended up with her own death. And that I think is appropriate because she deserved whatever she got, and he deserved whatever he got. It was great work by the Romeoville Police Department in Illinois, and also by the Catoosa, Oklahoma Police Department, that once they got the alarm on that car, they were all over the scene and they were heavily armed. They knew who they were dealing with, and thankfully it ended up with just the two wanted perps dying and no one else. But the scary thing is, and I'd like to know is, and maybe it's answered in somewhere deep down in all those pages of documents, is, besides trying to manipulate him into thinking that this was a good thing to do, was there anything that she held over him? Like maybe she maybe had some sort of connection with some dangerous people that could hurt him if he didn't do it. Maybe he's, psychologically impaired to the point where he needed her approval and she threatened to walk out on him. Those are some of the things I'd like to know about them personally, because the personality of the two people, they have probably very volatile personality, although we don't know of any domestic violence. But you would like to know the personality types of the two people, the perpology of the two. How is it that these two people were able to find each other, stay with each other, and convince each other that what they were doing was right? He convinced her that he could do this successfully. She convinced him to do it. And they escaped to Oklahoma, and they're smiling. Like, what is going on in that interpersonal dynamic that will allow this off-the-wall couple to together to do this? And that's something that I find really, really interesting about this case. And I'd like to see some of the documents to see if perhaps there is some sort of analysis of the couple.
Mike, I've seen evil people like this, that, people that were manipulators, that could manipulate other people to do extremely nefarious things, criminal things, violence. And so it's not in that way shocking to me, but I just can't, I can think of the horror of it.
Right.
For the police officers walking into that house and four human beings dead, two young boys, 8 and 9 years old, executed with a 9mm by this moron, Huey Jr. Like Miss T became a YouTube member. Congratulations, and thank you for joining the Police Off the Cuff YouTube family. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime, from a police perspective, you're in the right location. And if you're not subscribed, it's right on the screen. Hit that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up. Hit the like button. Share us with your friends and family. And if you want to contribute to us financially, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels, and we also have a YouTube channel membership with, count 'em, 5 different levels. And you could contribute to this show financially in those ways. But in the meantime, it's free to subscribe, and we welcome all new folks, new subscribers, new friends, new fans, whatever you want to call it, to joining the Police Off the Cuff family. This is sort of a remarkable case in the way of how actually horrific it is. And you don't see quadruple murders too often. The last time we saw it on a national level, of course, was the Idaho students' murders, and with the defendant Brian Koberger, who is yet to go to trial yet. But quadruple murders are not, they don't happen that often. They really don't. So you can imagine this little suburban community getting this case. It had to have been absolutely horrific.
And Terrell, the shocking update this morning, police are now investigating this as a quadruple murder. They are searching for a shooter after a man, a woman, and their 2 children were found dead inside their home, as well as their 3 dogs that were also shot to death. Police are now naming the adult victims, but not their children. Their names are Roberto Rolón and Zoraida Bartolome. Neighbors tell me the family had just recently moved into the home on the 500 block of Concord Avenue within the past few months. Police say a family member called requesting a well-being check when they hadn't heard from them, and one of the victims didn't show up to work Sunday morning. When officers arrived around 8:45 last night, they found all 4 people dead from gunshot wounds. Investigators have been combing the home nonstop for evidence as they work to gather leads.
Due to the time frame that has gone by, more than 18 hours from the time we were contacted, we are not asking anybody to shelter in place. We are not actively looking for anybody in the area. But we do always ask our residents to have a good sense of self-awareness and to report anything that they might see as suspicious.
Meanwhile, neighbors who say they barely knew the family, terrified watching it all play out, emergency crews swarming the house as they continue to investigate throughout the morning hours. This neighbor didn't want to show their face, but tells me what she knows of the family who lives across the street.
They kept to themselves. I really don't know. Never saw the kids outside playing. And I have a child, so I don't know really what happened. And it's very scary, too close to home.
And investigators believe the shooting happened sometime between 9 p.m. Saturday night and 5 a.m. Sunday morning. They're asking anyone with information to contact the Romeoville Police Department. Watch.
So again, you think of what that even does to a community, a suburban community, or like what the hell happened to you? What was going on? And right away, you usually think of drugs. What was the family involved in? What caused them as a family to be executed? Why? Why did this happen? And the police didn't have the answers for a while. And think of living next door to this. Rest in peace, Roland Bartolome family. 2 young boys, just absolutely horrific. This guy was manipulated to murder an entire family by this evil woman by the name of Ermelinda Palomo. And her family, of course, was trying to paint her as this innocent person that had nothing to do with this. But yet, she had everything to do with it, Mike.
Billy, she's the one that got the ball rolling. She's the one that started it. If she had just tried to settle whatever relationship issues she had with her fiance, none of this would have happened. We wouldn't have known about this whatsoever. It wouldn't have happened. And everyone in that community of Romeoville, that looks like a really nice suburban area, like middle-class people kind of keeping their homes looking nice. They're not used to the crime of Chicago with the gang shooting on the weekends and stuff like that, where you get 50 people shot, maybe half a dozen dead. This could be any sort of neighborhood in any suburban area across the country with good people, with homes and families trying to raise children, and to wake up to that horror. That's got to be devastating to the community too, because, this family moves in, they're quiet, they seem respectable, and one day you find out that they're wiped out. That really, it totally heightens the sense of, a victimization for the neighborhood, and that affects everyone there, and everyone suffers a little bit from what had happened. That's another part of the story about what happens to that community. How does a community heal from this sort of thing? All brought about from one person manipulating another person into killing someone over what amounts to disloyalty in a relationship. And when you think about what started it all out and how it ended up, it's just a terrible tragedy.
It's outrageous. I was trying to.
Suburban family of 4, a mystery that spans from suburban Romeoville all the way to Oklahoma, where the suspect was found dead. We're learning more now about another person involved in the case who lived in Streamwood. NBC 5's Natalie Martinez joining us live tonight from the northwest suburbs with the very latest on what we're finding out. Natalie?
Stefan, there are many questions, including those surrounding motive and connection. Now, police apparently have information on both, but have declined to comment specifically. Now, questions tonight continue to include what connection did the suspect, Nathaniel Huey, and person of interest, Ermelinda Palomo, have with the family of 4 who was shot to death over the weekend in Romeoville. Both Huey and Palomo were involved in a car crash and a shooting inside a car in Catoosa, Oklahoma on Wednesday. Both Streamwood residents are dead now from gunshot wounds. They were caught thanks to a flock license plate reader at a nearby shopping center in Oklahoma. The Oklahoma police chief tells us it was critical to safety. Also, Palomo's family attorney tells us she was home sleeping during the murders and that she left Streamwood Tuesday night, days after the family was murdered. Now, her family believes she was the one in danger.
She communicated with members of her family, telling them such things as, "I love you, take care of my grandbabies."
There's no telling, what would have happened. Armed suspects on the run, if an officer had contacted them without that information that Flock gave them.
So another woman from here in Streamwood says she and her mother lived with Huey for about 8 years and called him a very dangerous man. Christiana Espinoza tells NBC News that her mom was also the woman who was found in the car with Huey, but declined from confirming her mom's name. She says recently he started becoming suspicious, keeping to himself, staying in the garage, pushing us all away, even my mom, she says. There is much more to the story. We're learning a lot more, thanks in part to our Courtney Sisk, who has been following this all day as well. We'll bring you all of that news coming up tonight at 10.
So reiterating the story again and again and again. It's just, this is such a horrific story. And just to do a synopsis of this, really it's a love triangle. And I'll put the pictures. Some of you folks came in late. You wanted me to do the whole story over again. Well, I'm not going to do that, but we can see, here's the thumbnail. That's the couple, Nathaniel Huey Jr., and Ermelinda Palomo in the picture all the way on the bottom left. That's his fiance. On the right-hand side is the family that was executed by Huey Jr. And the woman in that picture, her name is Zoraida Bartolome. She was having an affair with Huey Jr. And his fiance spun some evil web that convinced Huey Jr. with his little pea brain to execute this family of 4. That is the synopsis of this entire case, and it was an absolutely devious plot that occurred in this case. Well, Mike, that's about all I have for tonight. Your final thoughts?
Final thoughts. I just want to think that the Romeoville PD did a great job, and the Catoosa PD did a great job, and thumbs up to them. And sadly, it ended the way it did, but actually, it ended probably the best way it could possibly end. That the two main characters that were responsible for killing that entire poor family in what must have been a horrific slaughter inside their own house at 3:00 in the morning in a beautiful neighborhood. Those two characters that did that horrific deed ended up, destroying each other. And that's this. So it ended well, and I'm glad for that. But this is what becomes of, manipulation and violence, is that it never ends well for anybody. And I'm glad that the way it ended is the way it ended.
Very well said, Mike. Well, folks, that's our show for this evening. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. On behalf of myself and retired NYPD Sergeant and Professor, law degree, part-time priest, Michael Geary. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Have a great night, everyone. God bless.
One episode